Namaskaram. Life has an intricate way of weaving people in and out of our paths. And when someone reappears in our lives after a period of silence, it leaves us questioning, why now? Why do they return? When two individuals form a connection, whether fleeting or profound, it leaves an imprint on their being. This imprint is not just emotional but also energetic. Human relationships are not mere transactions of words, gestures, or shared moments. They are exchanges of energy, creating invisible threads that bind people together. These threads are not easily severed even when distance, silence, or time intervenes. The nature of attachment is such that it lingers, often without our conscious awareness. Every interaction we have with another person plants a seed within us. If that seed is nurtured through affection, understanding, or shared experiences, it grows into something deeper, an emotional bond. But unlike physical objects that can be put away or discarded, these bonds reside within the mind and the heart. They become a part of our internal world, influencing our thoughts, feelings, and even our sense of identity. So when men return after a period of no contact, it is often because these bonds have not been fully resolved. The connection may have been dormant, but it was never truly broken. Time and distance can sometimes amplify the pull of this bond, as absence creates space for reflection. The human mind, in its quiet moments, has a tendency to revisit the past, reliving moments and questioning choices. In this process, unresolved attachments rise to the surface, reminding us of the connections we thought we had moved past. Attachment operates beyond logic. It is not always rational or aligned with our present circumstances. A person may know intellectually that a relationship has ended or that a return to the past may not serve them, but the heart often has its own reasons. It seeks to reconnect, to understand, to revisit the emotional terrain that once felt familiar and meaningful. This nature of attachment is deeply tied to our humanity. As social beings, we are wired to seek connection, to form bonds, and to find comfort in the presence of others. When these bonds are disrupted, it creates a sense of incompleteness, a loose end that the mind and heart feel compelled to tie up. Men, like anyone else, may find themselves drawn back to someone from their past because of this innate need to resolve what was left unfinished, to revisit the connection that still echoes within them. It is not weakness, it is the nature of being human. However, understanding this nature allows us to approach these moments with clarity and wisdom. Instead of being swept away by the pull of attachment, we can pause and ask ourselves what truly lies at the core of this return. Is it love, or is it a longing for closure? Is it genuine, or is it merely the mind's attempt to fill a void? In this awareness lies the power to respond with grace and strength, rather than being carried away by the tides of attachment. The human mind is a restless wanderer, forever seeking, questioning, and exploring. When a connection is severed or left in silence, it does not simply fade away. Instead, it often becomes a focal point of intrigue. The mind, in its natural state, craves understanding and resolution. It struggles to accept unfinished narratives, and this unresolved tension creates an almost magnetic pull toward what has been left behind. When someone exits our lives, especially without clear explanation or closure, the mind begins to dwell on the why. It replays past moments, conversations, and interactions, searching for clues and answers. This process is not necessarily intentional, but arises from the innate nature of the mind to seek patterns and make sense of what feels incomplete. Silence in this context is not just the absence of words. It becomes a loud space where assumptions, memories, and fantasies take root. The longer the silence persists, the more fertile this space becomes for curiosity to grow. The mystery of what the other person might be thinking or feeling begins to dominate the mental landscape. Questions like, "Do they miss me?" or "Have they moved on?" become persistent echoes in the mind. These unanswered questions act as fuel, feeding the curiosity and creating a desire to re-establish contact, even if only to gain clarity. Curiosity is also deeply tied to the mind's tendency to idealize the past. When someone is no longer present, the imperfections of the relationship often fade into the background, leaving behind an idealized version of what once was. The mind selectively remembers the moments of joy, connection, or comfort, and these memories become more vivid in the absence of new experiences to overshadow them. This selective memory creates a longing to reconnect, not necessarily with the reality of the person, but with the image of who they were during those cherished moments. Curiosity is not just about seeking answers. It is also about understanding oneself. When a connection ends, it often triggers introspection. The mind begins to explore questions about personal identity, value, and purpose within the context of the relationship. This self-inquiry can lead to a deeper understanding of one's desires, fears, and unmet needs. However, it can also create a loop of self-doubt or regret, prompting a return to the person who is now associated with these unresolved emotions. In many ways, the mind's curiosity is both a gift and a challenge. It pushes us to explore and understand, but it can also trap us in cycles of longing and nostalgia. When someone returns after a period of no contact, it is often because their curiosity has grown too strong to ignore. They seek answers, closure, or a chance to revisit the connection that still lingers in their thoughts. However, it is essential to recognize that curiosity, while powerful, is not always a reliable guide. The mind's quest for resolution can sometimes lead us back to places that no longer serve our growth. It is in these moments that we must discern whether the return is fueled by genuine intention or simply the mind's inability to sit with uncertainty. To master the mind's curiosity is to embrace the unknown, to find peace in unanswered questions, and to trust that not all stories need a perfect dot. The ego, that intricate part of our inner world, has a profound influence on how we perceive ourselves and our relationships. It thrives on identity, validation, and a sense of importance, often shaping our actions and reactions in ways we may not even realize. When a relationship experiences a period of no contact, the ego is triggered, sensing the silence as a challenge to its sense of value and significance. This is where the ego's game begins, a subtle, often subconscious interplay of emotions and motivations. When someone distances themselves, the ego tends to interpret it as rejection, even if the separation was mutual or necessary. Rejection strikes at the core of the ego's need for affirmation. It creates a feeling of being unworthy, unimportant, or forgotten, which the ego finds intolerable. To counteract this perceived threat, the ego begins to craft narratives that justify why the return to the person who distanced themselves is necessary. This could take the form of thoughts like, "They need me," "They don't understand how much I mattered," or even, "I will show them what they lost." These stories are not rooted in the heart's desire for connection, but in the ego's need to regain a sense of dominance or relevance. In the ego's game, silence becomes a battlefield. It exaggerates the significance of absence, turning it into an affront. The ego starts to strategize, calculating the best way to reclaim lost ground. This might manifest as an unexpected message, a sudden visit, or a declaration of feelings. While these actions may seem genuine on the surface, they often mask the ego's true intent to re-establish its control and soothe its wounded pride. The ego has a peculiar relationship with time. When enough time passes without contact, the initial feelings of hurt or rejection may dull, but they are replaced by a lingering sense of incompletion. The ego does not like to leave things unresolved. It craves closure, but on its terms. This is why men, or anyone influenced by the ego in such moments, may return to rewrite the narrative in a way that restores their sense of power or significance. The ego also uses comparison as a tool in its game. It may observe that the person who distanced themselves appears to be thriving without their presence, which can further fuel feelings of inadequacy. In response, the ego seeks to interrupt that progress, not necessarily out of malice, but as a way to reassert its importance. The thought of being replaced or forgotten is unbearable for the ego, so it compels one to act, even if the action does not align with genuine emotional growth or reconciliation. However, the ego's game is not inherently malicious. It is simply a defense mechanism rooted in our survival instincts. It is the ego's way of protecting us from pain, loss, and the fear of insignificance. Yet, if left unchecked, it can lead us to make choices that serve only our sense of self-importance, rather than fostering meaningful connections. When someone returns after a period of no contact, it is essential to ask, is this return driven by love, understanding, and growth, or is it the ego seeking to heal its bruises? Recognizing the ego's role in these moments allows us to approach them with clarity and discernment. It is not wrong to feel the pull to reconnect, but to act solely from the ego's desire for validation can perpetuate cycles of hurt and misunderstanding. The path to freedom from the ego's game lies in self-awarenesses. When we learn to observe the ego without judgment, we can begin to rise above its games. We can approach relationships with authenticity, free from the need to prove our worth or control the narrative. In this state, whether someone returns to us or not becomes less significant, for our sense of self is no longer tethered to their actions. Instead, we find peace in the understanding that true connection arises not from the ego's games, but from the heart's genuine intent. In every relationship, there is an exchange of energy that goes far beyond words or actions. This exchange is subtle yet profound, shaping the dynamics between two individuals. Energy flows naturally between people when they interact, creating invisible connections that influence emotions, thoughts, and even physical well-being. When a bond is formed, the energy exchange becomes imprinted. And this imprint does not simply vanish when communication ceases. It lingers, often pulling people back toward one another in ways that may feel inexplicable. When two individuals share a connection, they are not just exchanging surface-level interactions, but also their emotions, intentions, and vulnerabilities. This creates a unique energy field between them. Over time, this shared energy can become so intertwined that even when they part ways, it leaves a residual effect. This is why people often find themselves thinking about someone long after they have gone. because the energy is still present, subtly influencing their inner world. In moments of no contact, the energy dynamic undergoes a shift. One person may feel the need to pull back, either to protect themselves or to gain clarity. This withdrawal often leaves the other person feeling an imbalance, as though something is missing or unresolved. Energy seeks equilibrium by nature, and when there is a disruption in this balance, it creates a sense of tension that can draw one or both individuals back into each other's orbit. This pull is not always conscious. Often it manifests as an unexplained urge to reconnect, a sudden wave of nostalgia, or a persistent thought that won't go away. These feelings are the mind's interpretation of the underlying energetic imbalance. It's as if the unfinished exchange continues to echo, calling for resolution. Energy has a reciprocal quality. When one person pulls away, the other often feels compelled to move closer, attempting to fill the gap left behind. This dynamic is not limited to physical proximity. It operates on an emotional and energetic level as well. Even in silence, the energy continues to flow, creating a loop that keeps the connection alive. People may not always be aware of how deeply they are influenced by these energetic bonds. They might attribute their longing to reconnect to reconnection factors, such as memories, circumstances, or a sense of obligation. But at its core, the pull is often a result of the energy they shared. It is this unseen force that keeps the connection intact, even when time or distance has intervened. The energetic balance between two people is also shaped by their intentions and emotions. If one person harbors unresolved feelings, whether of love, guilt, regret, or anger, it creates an energetic ripple that the other person can sense, even from afar. This is why someone might return after a long period of no contact. They feel the weight of the unresolved energy and are drawn back in an attempt to restore harmony, whether consciously or unconsciously. The interplay of energy in relationships is complex and multifaceted. It operates on levels that go beyond what we can see or fully understand. Every action, thought, or emotion contributes to the energetic dynamic, creating patterns that persist long after the initial connection is formed. It is through this lens that we can begin to understand why people often feel compelled to revisit relationships or connections that they believed were behind them. Human beings are inherently driven by a need for connection, validation, and understanding. These needs often manifest in our relationships, where we seek comfort, love, and support from others. However, this natural desire for connection can sometimes lead to a reliance on external sources to fill internal voids. This is where the delicate balance between inner growth and outer dependence comes into play, as it shapes how we engage with ourselves and with those around us. Inner growth is the process of cultivating self-awarenesses, emotional resilience, and a deeper understanding of one's own identity and purpose. It involves facing one's fears, insecurities, and desires with honesty and developing the tools to navigate life independently of external validation. This growth creates a sense of completeness within, allowing an individual to experience relationships from a place of abundance rather than lack. When one has invested in inner growth, they approach relationships as an opportunity to share their wholeness, rather than as a means to compensate for feelings of incompleteness. Outer dependence, on the other hand, is rooted in the belief that happiness, fulfillment, or self-worth can only be attained through external sources. This dependence creates a pattern where individuals seek others to fill emotional gaps, validate their existence, or provide a sense of stability. While this reliance may bring temporary comfort, it often leads to cycles of attachment, disappointment, and longing. The moment the external source, be it a partner, a friend, or a relationship, withdraws or changes, the individual is left feeling unanchored, as their sense of self was built on a fragile foundation. This dynamic becomes particularly evident in relationships where one person returns after a period of no contact. For some, the return may signify growth, a realization born from introspection and an honest reassessment of what truly matters. For others, it may stem from dependence, a need to regain a sense of validation or fill the emptiness left behind by the absence of the other. The distinction between these two motivations lies in the energy behind the action, whether it arises from self-assured clarity or unresolved neediness. Outer dependence often creates a fear of solitude, as being alone forces individuals to confront their inner world. This fear can drive people to seek out relationships, not because they are ready to give and grow together, but because they are unwilling to face the discomfort of their own unresolved emotions. These relationships tend to be reactive, built on the premise of avoiding loneliness rather than fostering genuine connection. Inner growth, by contrast, embraces solitude as a space for reflection and healing. It allows individuals to understand their patterns, their triggers, and the ways in which they project their needs onto others. This understanding creates freedom, as it liberates them from the constant pursuit of external approval. With inner growth, relationships become healthier as they are no longer burdened by the weight of unspoken expectations or the pressure to fill emotional voids. The journey from outer dependence to inner growth is not a linear path, nor is it an easy one. It requires courage to face the parts of oneself that are vulnerable, broken, or in need of healing. It demands patience and persistence, as true growth is a gradual process that unfolds over time. The rewards of this journey, however, are profound, as they allow individuals to experience life and relationships with a sense of authenticity and balance. When relationships are approached from a place of inner growth, there is an inherent freedom in the connection. There is no longer a need to cling, to control, or to seek constant reassurance. Instead, there is a shared space where two whole individuals can come together, not out of necessity, but out of choice. This creates a dynamic of mutual respect, understanding, and support, where the relationship serves as an enhancement to one's life rather than its foundation. In life, relationships often act as mirrors, reflecting back to us the depths of our own emotions, desires, and fears. When someone returns after a period of no contact, it is rarely a simple matter. It can stem from the pull of unresolved attachments, the mind's relentless curiosity, the ego's need for validation, the energetic imbalances left behind, or even the interplay between inner growth and outer dependence. But in each of these situations lies an opportunity, a chance to pause, reflect, and understand. What draws them back is not as important as how we choose to respond. The key is to cultivate self-awareness and ask the deeper questions. Is this return born of genuine connection or unhealed wounds? Is it an opportunity for mutual growth, or is it a replay of patterns that no longer serve us? The journey of relationships is, at its core, a journey back to ourselves. Whether they return or stay away, whether the bond rekindles or fades into the past, what matters most is how deeply rooted we are in our own wholeness. For when we approach life from a place of inner completeness, we are free to embrace connection without clinging, to love without fear, and to let go without regret.